The people make up the town, but the buildings really give it its character. And that's the sad thing about Luton, is that it's lost its character because of all the demolition of the buildings. The people are fine, but it's the actual place itself that it's struggling to find a character now, which it had, but it no longer has.
No, I don't like Luton, because it's full of chavs and drunk people.
I don't like Luton because there's like nothing I can do here that I can't do anywhere else.
No, I don't like Luton. It's a horrible place to live. I will tell you why, in my own opinion. For what I consider the main problems of Luton is that there are too many people living in poverty in Luton.
Some people think that the only things to come out of Luton are planes from the airport and not very successful football team, the Hatters. Not many people know Luton's history that, in the matter of fact, has a lot of hidden stories. It is generally said to be one of the oldest roads in Great Britain, extending from Ivanhoe Beacon in Buckinghamshire. Going through outskirts of Luton to Nettishall Heath in Norfolk, it consists of prehistoric pathways.
It was originally one of the old Roman roads. It's a Roman path or road that originated, and it's only just down the bottom of the road.
There is a site with a grim history on the outskirts of Luton. Long ago in the 16th and 17th centuries, it was used as a burial ground for local witches. It was also a place of public executions, and it was on this hill that the town authorities built a gibbet as a warning and deterrent to local criminals, particularly thieves. Lying within the Chilterns area of outstanding natural beauty, the hills are home to rare species of flowers and butterflies. Luton Hoo is one of Britain's greatest treasure houses. The palatial mansion, now a private hotel, has featured in a number of famous films, including 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Eyes Wide Shut, The Secret Garden, The World Is Not Enough. Steven Spielberg's film War Horse was taken place at Luton Hoo in 2010. Queen and Prince Philip honeymooned there in 1947.
One building that the council didn't have anything to do with, favoured by the Queen. She used to visit there frequently, every month or so, used to go to Luton Hoo. And while she was at Luton Hoo, she always used to visit then the St Mary's Parish Church. Initially that was built as a solicitor's house back in the 1860s, I think it was. That was a private house, and in the late 1800s, it was bought by the council, or bought by 2 of the councillors, and they then sold it for the same money to the council in just after 1906, I think it was, and it then became Wardown Park. But before that, it was a private house and garden. They dammed the lake because here we're literally on the end of the River Lee. I mean, part of Luton, the name Luton originates from connections with the Lee. Lee Grave, where we are just down the road, that's you know, the sort of start of the Lee. Before the library was built, you could see the river flowing along, you know, and then when they built the library, they covered it over with slabs. That is the one thing I've always thought Luton lacks. I mean, unlike Bedford, we don't have a really nice river.
Luton began when the Saxons conquered Bedfordshire in the 6th century. For centuries, Luton continued to be a quiet market town serving the surrounding countryside. In the 17th century, a straw hat-making industry began. Luton grew rapidly in the 19th century. During the 20th century, the hat-making industry, which had dominated Luton for so long, went into decline, but new industries came to Luton. One of these was engineering. Vauxhall came to the town in 1905. Soon Luton became known for car manufacturing.
Vauxhalls, I mean, that was huge when Vauxhalls was in production in the 50s and 60s and 70s, I suppose. There was at one time about 18,000 people working in Vauxhalls. They're huge. They used to hold concerts at weekends when the canteen wasn't being used. They used it as a concert venue then for Vauxhall Choir, or the Luton Girls Choir, of course. You mustn't forget them. They're the best known product that's come from the town. They used to have an annual 2 or 3 week holiday known as the Vauxhall Fortnight or holiday, and the whole town virtually used to shut down. Everything was, all the shops would take their holidays, lots of shops would take their holidays, and it was really more of a ghost town. Well, up on the right of Park Street West was the J.W. Green's brewery. It was a huge brewery, and the whole area, I mean, back in the early 1900s, so they used to say, it was, you know, the aroma from the beer was, you know, fantastic. Every pub window, it used to have J.W. Green's noted Luton ales. At the bottom of Church Street there was an electricity generating station, and they had two or three massive great chimneys, towers, that used to pump out all the steam that was created from the generating of the electricity, and they were real landmarks they were behind the college and the university and the college and the church. You know, they were at the bottom of Church Street.
Many notable buildings which had escaped the damage of World War II were subsequently demolished.
Like all buildings in Luton, if it needed repairs, rather than repair it, they demolish it. The council have always had a philosophy of if it needs money spending on it, then it's better to spend it on a new building than on an old one. It was a lovely building. It was a real old Victorian building, and they demolished the top half and just left the bottom. It's the big paved area outside Debenhams. That was where the old Corn Exchange stood.
The Mall Luton is a large shopping centre in the centre of Luton. It was formerly an Arndale centre until it was purchased by the Mall Company in 2006.
The main shopping area in there was a road called Waller Street, which follows roughly the line of the main mall through the Arndale. It's roughly along there. We used to have a Victorian theatre along there called the Grand Theatre. That was a lovely building. I remember going there as a child in the 40s. When Wellington Street was there, George Street was mainly hat manufacturers. They had all their works along George Street, and the Wellington Street was the main shopping street in the town.
Luton Town Hall is situated at the junction between Manchester Street, Upper George Street and George Street. The current building was completed in 1936 on the site of the older Town Hall and was built for a total cost, excluding the purchasing of the land, for £2,200.
The servicemen, they were refused permission to hold an organised procession or gathering, celebration after the First World War. They were refused permission by the council to hold this gathering, and so in revenge, several of the servicemen and other people decided to town hall the light, as it was then, and that was it. It was burnt down in July, I think it was, 1919. They finished about 5 years before I was born, but they started in just after 1900 or so, just before 1910, and they went through until the 1930s. They had trams, electric lines overhead, metal rails in the road. Apparently there's a lot of places in Luton where they've resurfaced the road and they left the lines there, so when they do any repairs on the road they come across the tram lines which are in the road.
I do like Luton. It does have some really dodgy areas, but then so does everywhere. And yeah, I mean, it's what I'm used to, so I don't see me leaving unless I need to. Unless I absolutely have to.
A little bit sad about the way things have developed in Luton, particularly with the sort of racist attitude that has begun to develop in the town, but it's always been I've never wanted to move away, and it's not got the greatest of names now, but it's always done well by me.
Welcome to Luton.
Luton is 30 miles north of London. It's most famous for its airport and Vauxhall cars, which was the main reason Asian immigrants came here. In 2000, however, the factory relocated, leaving thousands unemployed.
I used to work in Vauxhall myself for 8 years as well.
Wow, did you?
Yes, it was quite nice. It's a shame that the company went down.
Yeah. Vauxhall closing down was a real shame for Luton,
It was the
I think.
downtown to Luton.
Yeah, it's a lot of jobs to go just straight away.
That's it.
Those Asian immigrants working in the factory started moving into one area called Berry Park, and the nearly 30,000 strong Asian community has remained here even after Vauxhall massively scaled down in Luton. This is Berry Park. It's quite a famous part of Luton actually. It's where a lot of the Muslim population live, loads of Asian people live here. And I've not actually shopped here at all, I don't think. I think I've literally been here once or twice. Drove through it and stuff. But it is really interesting because, you know, we are in an English town, but you could easily mistake it for not being English. Easily. There's loads of different mosques in Luton, is that right?
It is, yeah.
How many roughly would you say?
Roughly, we're looking between at least 30 mosques in Luton town area.
Wow. That's quite a lot, no?
It's quite a lot.
Yeah. It didn't take long to witness firsthand the extremism I'd been hearing about. I wasn't sure what they were marching for, but tensions were running high.
Your sister, brother! Your mother! Where is the shame? How dare they touch our woman?
It turns out the demo was in response to the arrest of local woman Mona Thorney, whose husband set off a bomb in Stockholm in 2010. I cannot believe this is happening. I've never seen anything on this scale before. And it breaks my heart to think that this is happening in my town.
Hands off Muslims! Hands off Muslims! Hands off Muslims!
Everyone's got a right to protest, but I found their chanting provocative and extreme.
British police go to hell! British police go to hell!
This is a message to stop oppression.
Police burning hell. British police burning hell.
Yeah, because
No real Muslim wants anyone to burn in hell.
yeah, but for what they've done, for the
You
consequences
can't
of their
pick and
actions.
choose. You can't pick and choose. You can't.
You either believe or you disbelieve.
You know
You
what?
choose to wear this, I choose to wear that.
You and I will
That's
have
why you
to.
look naked on the street.
Do I look naked? Do I really? I don't look naked.
You're trying to seduce.
No one's trying to seduce me, and I'm not trying to seduce anyone. You shouldn't judge me how I try not to judge you. You are. You've just said who am I trying to seduce? No one.
I said I am judging.
Well, I don't judge you because I'm above that.
Go wear some clothes.
Excuse me, go and put on some clothes. How you choose to live, how you choose to dress like that, I choose to dress like this. You don't start.
It's okay.
Don't you dare speak to me like that. No, this is my hometown as well. No, I'm walking. I am walking. No, I can do what I want. That girl's just. I don't mind. Point away. Point away. Because you're not scaring me. I try my hardest to sympathise with people who are maybe different to me. And it's a tiny minority that play up. Who are you trying to seduce? Go and put some clothes on. You look naked. Oh.
They've been arrested. They've been harassed by the police.
Such a shame.
No evidence whatsoever.
Do you think it's fair that you should say British police need to burn in hell?
That's a freedom of speech. If they wish to say it, they can say it.
In Islam, doesn't it say that you have to respect the law of the land that you're living in?
No.
I thought it did. One of the saddest things is people have brought their kids along. Any extreme group with extreme views should probably try and leave their kids out of it until they're old enough to make their own decision. So how are we ever going to get there if they keep involving kids? Maybe I could get some sense out of Anjum Chowdhury, who I'd seen in the media spouting lots of extreme Islamic ideas. Please, mate, you tell me who this group are and why you're out today.
Yeah, you find here today a number of people from Luton who are just ordinary Muslims from the local community. Some of them used to be part of Al-Muhajirun or Muslims Against Crusades. And ultimately they're here today because of the raid of 2 Muslim women earlier this month and they were also strip searched, so that is a violation of their honour.
What's the solution? You know, if Muslim people are in the wrong and they are committing crimes, you know, no one's above the law.
If the law of the land is Islamic, we respect the law of the land.
What if it's not Islamic?
If it's not Islamic, then the law of the land and those who make it can go to hell, quite honestly, because Allah said in the Quran, in chapter 33, verse 1, He said, "O Prophet, fear Allah and do not obey the disbelievers and the hypocrites." Is David Cameron a Muslim or a disbeliever? Guys,
I can't speak on Cameron,
so you can't obey him. So he can go to hell, as well as all of the other leaders.
Do you think I should go to hell?
Let me tell you something.
I'm a non-Muslim.
You're on your way to the hellfire because you're a non-Muslim. All non-Muslims are destined for the hellfire.
Do you really believe that?
Yes, and you will be fueled for the hellfire as well. But the fact is that you have an opportunity to change.
That hurts me to think that you think that of me, because you don't really know me, and you think I'm destined to hell because I'm non-Muslim.
You said you're not a Muslim, so that's enough for me to know that you're not Muslim. If you're not Muslim, you're destined for the hellfire, unless you change.
I find it sad that anyone would preach such a damning message. The only consolation is that of the 30,000 Muslims living in Luton, there are less than 100 at this rally. I don't even know how to sum up in words, even to tell you how I'm feeling right now. I feel completely gutted that this is happening.
And we saw the placards, so we ran up there, and then it turned out to be the Muslim extremists. None of them were searched. They could have had anything strapped to them. They let them get so close to our soldiers. They could have had C4 on them. One of them could have pushed that button and took out half of that regiment. That's a joke.
Was there violence? Was there?
No, people were trying to get them. Them Muslim extremist scum that did that on the day needed a punch on the bloody nose, or a punch on the nose to make it bloody.
Do you feel like you had no alternative but to fall?
That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Let's say that. That was just it. That was just like, you are now taking the piss. We get demonised by the press, yeah? Me particularly, because people look at me and they think, oh, he seems a bit aggressive, right? I'm not aggressive, I'm just passionate.
The problem with Luton is that although the Central Mosque preaches peace, just down the road it's a very different story.
Exposing the regime, how they're behaving to Muslims.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, you know, it says democracy, and then it's got like a sketch of a hand with blood pouring down it, which is quite out there, really. And you know, some of the bullet points are quite extreme. You know, democracy destroys life, democracy pollutes the mind. They're quite anti-government, they're quite anti-Britain, you know. I think from this literature they're trying to say that, you know, the government are corrupting us and democracy is a bad thing and everything's awful at the minute. It's just so out there, like sex objects. That's why people get raped, because of democracy. Spectrum, so that everything they say and everything I say, we're never, ever, ever, ever going to agree. And that scares me and that makes me sad, because that makes me feel like we're always going to have issues in Luton. And, you know, how is someone like me and someone like them ever going to live in harmony? It's never going to happen.